You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast, Season 6, Episode 251.
Smoky Mountain Bigfoot, Russia leaving ISS, UFO, false flag, and Artbell.
Yeah. All right, welcome back. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And we're going to talk to you about some stuff today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just so you know. Okay, so this is the CreepGeeks Podcast, and this is a podcast where we broadcast paranormal news and share our strange stories from our underground bunker in the mountains of western North Carolina.
Sure do.
We are available on all platforms when it comes to podcasting, so whatever your favorite flavor is, just pick it and we'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what can more you see? Because people have their own, like, I think if you're a youngster, you're probably like,
that's
Spotify.
Obvious. Oh, yeah.
What do you mean that's obvious?
Well, like, okay, so we went to a conference recently and we were explaining podcasts, and it seemed like every time I was explaining where to find our show, the youngsters were just like, okay, got it, and they walked off.
Well, yeah, of course.
But then some people who are slightly older but do listen to podcasts, well, what platform are you on? Because, like, one of their favorite podcasts was, like, only on some other platform.
Yeah. I mean, we're available, like, in Somalia.
I know.
So, and I get it, because there's a lot of people that do that, where they have a podcast or whatever, and they don't really understand. I guess they just, okay. It's a drawn-out thing. We've been doing this for a while. And we're ones to pretty much try to do it all ourselves. So that usually entails a bunch of learning. And, you know, sometimes after a while, when you've been familiar with something long enough, you forget the tiny details. Yeah. You just kind of gloss over them because to you, they're not really details anymore. It's just how it is. And so when you actually talk to someone who's like, yeah, how do I get a podcast? And you're like, So what we've done with our podcast to make it kind of easy, because we do a lot of conferences and things like that, and we do talk to people that are a little bit older, a little bit younger, we have our podcast set up a couple different ways. I mean, you can go to the website and play the latest episode there, which is creepgeeks.com. You can go to YouTube and type creepgeeks.com, and you can just play it and listen, and it's one of those that's considered hashtag listenable, to where you can just let it play in the background. Mm-hmm. You know, we have links to Facebook that'll take you to embedded players and all that sort of thing. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't or wouldn't be able to listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Now, if you have listened to the podcast and you want to share your strange story, strange experiences, or you want to comment about the show, you can go to that creepgeeks.com and click on the contact form, or you can give us a call. That phone number is going to be 575-208-4025, and that is a Roswell area code.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. All right. So anyway, kind of moving into the podcast, there's a couple different things we want to talk about. And we normally go through and put what our dinner is going to be. And it's just basically like stuff we have left over in the freezer. So one of us is going to get some fish fillet. One of us is going to get, part of a pizza. Who knows, man. It's just kind of one of those things. Because we came back from the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference, which we go to every year. We've done 5. Technically, there's been 4 Smoky Mountain Bigfoots and 1, I think it was like cryptids and legends and lore.
Yeah.
So I count that one because it was in the same place. But anyway, we went this past weekend, and we seen a bunch of cool people, including Small Town Monsters crowd, because we do enjoy those guys quite a bit. And, yeah, came back with a little bit of a cold because it was a weird situation where it's been 1,000 degrees and 1,000% humidity. So you go outside and then you go inside where it's like 70.
Yeah.
And all that in and out all day.
And then also,
it's really sort of wrecked my throat and my head. And then the weather has just been stormy and rainy and everything else in between.
But I noticed something when we left Gatlinburg, which is where the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference is, and we started to descend and ascend in elevation. That's when it really started to hit.
Yeah, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and you're in the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But, I didn't start feeling real bad until because you felt bad towards the end of the event.
I felt bad the whole time.
But I started, I didn't even start to feel bad. I actually felt great until like an hour into driving home. And
Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, we have to get up super early to do it because it's only 2.5 hours away, and I'm not going to get there a day early and get a hotel room or do any of that stuff. I'm just not going to sleep and then get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drive. And that's exactly what we did, and it was not the right
Which one of our listeners
decision.
was like, y'all ain't spring chickens anymore. Maybe you should get a hotel room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, how dare you, first off. And secondly, it's $100 in Gatlinburg.
No.
It is $200.
It's a lot more.
No. See, okay, here's let me be clear. I'm not paying any more than $100 in Gatlinburg, ever. Mm-hmm. If that means we're driving 20 miles out to go stay somewhere and pay less than $100,
Okay.
who would? Now, we have a camper van, but when it's like 1,000 degrees and 1,000% humidity, I'm not an animal. I'm not sleeping in a toaster sweat box so I can stay moist all day. No, not happening. So, excuse me. So we went to Smoky Mountain Bigfoot, and we got to see a lot of people that we know, and our favorite people. And basically our favorite people, I think, are small town monsters because we see them quite a bit, and Seth and Zach and Heather and Courtney.
Alexander.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
They have a cool setup now. It's got this big picture, and it's really nice. It's big and colorful, and they have a really nice.
You've done like the conference and convention scene when you're complimenting people's like stand-ups for their displays.
Yeah, ours is straight up trash. I mean, we roll out the banner, we get things set up, we throw it, because that's not been the intention of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We go and we do these things, and we found it was easier to get a vendor table and to be able to go around and talk to people and do all that sort of thing as vendors than as attendees. And we've been doing it long enough now where we have noticed that there's ways to do things and ways to make things happen. It makes the experience of being a vendor at these events go smoothly. And we just don't do it. So it becomes just this thing, right? Lugging stuff in. But, then there's always pitfalls and stuff like, instead of being able to go in this front door right here, like you have been for the past 2 years, we need you to go down around the corner, go underneath the belly of the center, unload your stuff, try to find a place to park.
Walk uphill a block, break your coffee display, which is hanging on its last legs anyways. Yeah. So,
yeah, when we left, it was like, where's your car? Oh, it's 3 blocks away. And so we actually went around the corner and up the hill and dragging and stuff. It was an experience on the way out. But anyway, that's not necessarily a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I'll have you know, that whole journey of leaving and packing all of our stuff up, which we did have offers of help, which was very nice and very much appreciated. Zach and Heather, very nice. I walked 5,000 steps.
Really?
Yeah.
My phone says
And then my watch kept saying, you're in a fall hazard situation.
My phone said I barely did 3,000. So.
Well.
For that particular walk.
Well, my watch was proud of me. It was like, dude, and I was sweating in my own eyes. But anyway, it was a great event because there was lots of people there, and they were all promoting Bigfoot and talking about Bigfoot.
And that's what I liked about this. That's why we like this one is we'll go, and it's Bigfoot. You don't have to really worry about too much variation. If you are interested in Bigfoot or Sasquatch or the bipedal ape that is here in North America phenomenon, it's that, So, literally.
Yeah, and they have good guests, and it's air conditioned. It's a nice place to be in Gatlinburg. It's not too terribly expensive to get there. And I really think that there's a lot of, cryptid people that do research and do this sort of thing where they go to conferences and stuff. They snooze on it. They miss it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we're going to be at this event where there's at least 2,000 or 3,000 people walking around. And you want to tell me about this event that's 45 minutes away from your house that has 200 people, and you're telling me how great it is. And that may be true. It's great because the people there are enthusiastic. Yeah. But, dude, if you're going to pack up all your stuff, and maybe, sell a poster or something like that to try to help further your cause, why not go where there's 2,000 people? See, we drive. A lot of vendors don't.
Yeah.
And we have a limit.
Yeah.
I mean, our limit is like if we drive over 250 miles, we're going to either get a place to stay or park in the camper van, that kind of thing. We're not just like, oh, come on down, because we've done events where we've driven 4 hours to get there, and there's been 75 people, and none of which knew what was going on.
Somebody said I was very picky in our criteria because I have like
Yes, we are.
For every 100 miles, there has to be X amount of people. If a vendor table costs X amount, then I need this many people to show up to the event. And people are like, wow, that's pretty critical. But we are looking at this as from a very businessy perspective.
Yeah.
And business has many facets, whether it's growing the podcast.
Lots of moving parts.
We're not looking at these events for just community, which there are some great local, regional events in certain areas. But I'm not about to drive 400 miles if you can't guarantee me 400 people.
Well, don't say it like that. You're not going to drive 400 miles if it looks like there's not going to be enough people to make it worth the trip.
Yeah.
Now, look, we go because we like this quite a bit, and we love the people that we talk to, and we enjoy discussing the topics.
Yeah.
But at the same time, gas is like over $4 a gallon.
I mean,
if things cost money, and when we bring little stickers and things like that, and jewelry and things, and stuff like to these events, that all costs money.
Yeah.
Whether we make it or, and we bring this stuff because, we have a table for one thing, so you have the cost of the table and all the supplies and junk like that. So it kind of has to be worth the time, because we're not always just going for fun.
Yeah.
And if we can go and put some gas in the tank and be able to kind of do that thing, it just makes it all the more better. But I just think that our view of what's considered to be a really successful event, it depends on a couple different things. Because if people don't know, they don't go. Mm-hmm. If we've never heard of the people speaking, chances are, and there may not be that many people there. And if it's in some place that's way out of the way or really hard to kind of get into, you may not have the turnout that you're looking for as a promoter or an event organizer. And I hate to say this, but if you don't put Bigfoot in the name, people don't go.
Or alien or UFO.
It needs to be the popular thing for the past 3 to 4 years has been Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So if you don't have Bigfoot in the name, if you have something where it's like
the experience,
conference, and I'm not singling anybody out, the conference on the unexplained, which we've done 2 of those and they've been great.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably aren't going to go, but if you put like Bigfoot, UFO, whatever, they're going to get more people. I don't know. It's just kind of thing. Anyway, moving back into the podcast, talking about Smoky Mountain.
I will say, if we do go to your small event, it's because we love you. So, because we do go to some small events just because we really like those people. So
yeah, you act like they're listening. Like, oh, they're not going to.
We don't know.
Well, I mean,
their listeners might be listening.
You have to have criteria,
which is another criteria. What a lot of people don't realize is after we do these events, one of the first things Greg does is after the event, we go check our podcast stats and our YouTube. Did we get new listeners? Did we get new subscribers? Did we get new people contacting us?
I like to call that the metrics.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that was a big rant.
Smoky Mountain. Well, it's not. We're trying to be polite about the whole thing. We could do an entire podcast on event vending, paranormal event vending, on how to do it from start to finish and even what to bring.
Oh, we should.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we'd have anyway. If you have never gone to Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and you're listening and you're anywhere close to that, you should go. Because you'll have a place to go where you're going to have credible people there speaking about what they know and their knowledge of Sasquatch and everything else that goes along with it. You're going to have like-minded people walking around, and you're going to have event vendors that are there and they have knowledge of Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to call them, right? Depending on your flavor of
The presentations were awesome. They were on 2 huge screens with professional audio and everybody had a nice comfy chair, and that room was packed.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, it's it's a good time, and it's set up and it's organized nicely, and we know the event promoters, and because we've met them and over time, and it's as organized as it can be.
Dr. Jeff Meldrum was there, and I didn't get to go up again.
He was busy the entire time.
I know.
Like he was, and what I noticed is because there was a couple of other people, famous people there, and they had helpers and stuff, and some of them may have been family. You know what I mean? Kind of wrangling things for them and stuff like that. Like, Russell was there. Russell Accord was there. Ronnie was there.
Dr. Myra.
Yeah, she was there.
Stacy was there. Alex was there doing a presentation.
Yeah, Alex was there, and Dr. Jeff Meldrum was there. Jeff Meldrum, right? That dude was by himself, and he was like 30 deep all day long. So he was doing everything himself, to the point where I'm sitting, because we sat across from those guys, and we got to watch the people file in and ask questions and take pictures and all that stuff. And I think out of everybody there, the one who was the most personable, from what I could see, was Russell.
Yeah.
That dude was in it, man. You want a handshake or a hug? Here I go.
You want to lift up my pack?
Yeah, you want to wear my
80
pound bag? Yeah. So, I mean, it was good.
Yeah.
They're all polite. They're all nice. I mean, it was a good time. So you can go see some famous people and stuff like that, but you should definitely check it out. Especially if you want to plan for like next year, 2023. I mean, you've got Smoky Mountain Bigfoot. There's going to be Cryptid Con. There's going to be all these amazing things, Mothman Festival and stuff like that to go check out. Marion Bigfoot Festival. So it doesn't hurt to plan. Anyway, we went. We had a good time. We went home. Been sick. Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things like in and out, in and out, in and out between the hot and cold, because it's just been so humidity-filled, miserable heat for like 2 weeks, and there's been we talked about that last podcast with a heat wave coming in like England and places like that. And
I will say the weird weather, like the weird heat, and then the storms and stuff like that. It's been driving some weird animal sounds out here, especially at night.
Yeah, because they're all moist.
Ugh, stop.
So, all right. So this is something I came across the other day, and I thought I would share it. If you've listened to the podcast at all, you know that, we like Artbell, and Coast to Coast and Artbell, I think, has had a major influence on the paranormal and 14 and the cryptid, the whole thing, because that show was a show that normalized it.
Groundbreaking.
And it was groundbreaking. It was innovative and all that stuff. But this was a show that took a serious look at this sort of thing. And by serious, they didn't make fun of you if you went on the show. I'm talking about Artbell. And have, it wasn't like, it was taken serious.
Well, like,
I'm going to listen to what you say, and I'm going to ask you serious questions, and I'm going to give whatever it is you're talking about some serious consideration.
And you have to think about the era, too, because, like, okay, so the Wytheville UFO Festival, part of the Wytheville UFO story, part of that is all based on all these people calling into a local radio station. And at first, they were picking on them, like kind of cracking jokes on them. But the calls kept coming in. So he had to take all those calls before he started taking them seriously.
Yeah, that's not Artbell. We're talking about the guy who did the most investigations.
But then Artbell comes along, Coast to Coast comes along, and suddenly you can call and talk to somebody and have them genuinely listen to you and what you're telling them.
And Artbell was no slouch. And we're talking about this is the 90s where, he's kind of his own maverick radio disc jockey sort of thing. I mean, the movie Good Morning Vietnam was sort of loosely based on him and his experiences as he flew into a foreign country and basically got orphans. Yeah. And then he broadcasted for like 24 hours. And so he's done quite a bit. So Artbell was a pretty interesting character. He's done a ton of episodes. I mean, going back to like the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard them all because I didn't start listening to Artbell until like 2000 and Coast to Coast because I didn't even know it existed, right? And I think part of the reason is because radio stations, especially AM radio stations, got smart. They're like, wait a minute, this guy he's doing like a 4-hour block. Yep. And he's got listeners. We don't have to have anybody important on that late. We can just play this. And since it was being promoted in a serious way, it wasn't like a joke show or anything like that. That's what they did.
And how I started learning about him, I was like a late teenager, so 19, 20, aged 19, 20. Some of the FM stations got savvy. So after my favorite radio program late at night on one of the old stations I used to listen to, after that would play, they'd play like the last half of Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Artbell was the guy who bought his own radio station.
yeah.
Because he was an engineer. He would do the show, and as he would do the show, he would engineer the show. You know, I think he actually held patents in radio technology and stuff. So, I mean, he was his own special weirdo when it came to stuff. And he had the weirdest taste in music, but that's part of what made the show. Anyway, I came across a Linktree page, and if you're not familiar with the Linktree page, it's basically a page that has all the links to the social properties related to whatever it is you're clicking on, right? It's like if we hand you a card that says go to this Linktree page, it's going to have like all of our social media properties and websites and things like that, so you can kind of pick and choose and where you can find a podcast. But this thing is called the Artbell Tape Vault. And it's basically you click on it and you can go and you can find, you know, all these Artbell coast to coast episodes. And it's divided, you know, it's like Artbell Tape Vault, the best of the Kingdom of Nye, because the radio station was NYE in Pahrump, Nevada, so it's called the Kingdom of Nye, right? You have editor picks, best of open lines, which is just anybody could call in, UFO selections, Ghost to Ghost AM, which he did on Halloween, where people call and tell ghost stories, and the music that was involved in the show. And once you click on it, it takes you to Spotify. So you can go to Spotify and listen to a couple hundred episodes of Coast to Coast AM with Artbell. That's impressive. What are you doing over there? You're like not even paying attention. I'm over here broadcasting, and you just over there. What are you doing? Taking a nap?
No. One of my nails.
All right, I don't care. Let's move back.
My
So
nail
anyway,
broke down to the quick, and it hurt.
that is disgusting. People don't have quicks. Animals have quicks.
No, you can. It's
No.
cuticle, whatever.
No.
It's
No.
anyways.
Moving back into the show. Pay attention, please. But no, I thought this was a freaking treasure, man. I mean, you can actually go and listen to a couple hundred episodes of Coast to Coast AM with Artbell. I mean, come on. For free. And this is like if you went to Coast AM and tried to do it with George Norrie, you got to pay to listen to these episodes, and these are on Spotify.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of them have Norrie in there, which I'm okay with. I liked George Norrie for a long time, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I just don't like this guy anymore because he's not about it. He's checked out. You know? And there's a difference. There's definitely a difference. So if you listen to Coast AM or Artbell in general, and you're like, man, I wish I could find some old episodes that aren't like the same 10 episodes that you find on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, we have a link in our show notes because everything we talk about, we include a link to. Go to Spotify and listen. And, you know, you don't have to have like the paid account on Spotify either. Just get a free account and let them roll. And there's a ton of them. Like, you know, the day after Roswell, right? Casebook on the Men in Black, Consciousness and the Supernatural. And these are by all the people that are famous in this whole thing because Artbell made them all famous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Philip J. Corso, Colonel Philip J. Corso, right? I mean, we're talking Graham Hancock. There's Terrence McKenna. There is if you're famous in this field.
Who's the guy? The Area 50, Bob Lazar.
Yeah, Bob Lazar is in there. George Knapp is in there, of course. Whitley Strieber.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Richard Dolan. I mean, Michio Kaku. Just anybody who's famous in this entire realm, and the people that you've seen on Ancient Aliens and stuff, some of the experts, they come from this.
There were a couple
from being on this radio show.
Really weird episodes with Whitley Strieber because they started to
Stanton Friedman.
They started to branch out there and really get into aliens. And that I remember those
John
shows.
Lear, Bob Lazar. That episode was from 1992, talking about Area 51.
Yeah.
And this is where I learned about Skinwalker, because people were like, Skinwalker Ranch used to be a litmus test. If you knew about Skinwalker Ranch, then chances are you knew about UFOs, paranormal stuff, and all that. If nobody ever heard of it, or you didn't, if you talked to someone, you asked them about Skinwalker Ranch, they hadn't had a clue.
Yeah.
Then you knew that they didn't know a whole lot. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is where I heard about Skinwalker Ranch and all of that stuff. I mean, it goes back. I mean, 1997, even up to 2015. So I think this is a treat. We have a link to it. You should listen to it if you want. I mean, if you don't like Artbell, that's okay. I won't judge you. But I won't send you a Christmas card either. It was very nice. But yeah, I was super excited, and I started to sit down and try to listen to an episode. I'm like, all right, I can't really do this now.
Yeah.
Because, you could just sit there and listen all day long. So that was pretty good. So that's a little treat for you. So if you appreciate that, let us know. Mm-hmm. If you have a favorite episode or something that you remember about that show, and you want to share it, that's great too. One of the things that I do remember before we move on to the next thing is that he allegedly had a pilot call in who was basically flying over Area 51.
Oh, yeah.
And, people are like, it's a fake, it's not a fake. It's kind of hard to tell. Artbell thought it was for real.
Yeah.
And the guy just sort of was flying over and just sort of dropped off the map. Don't know what happened to him.
Oh.
So he's like, I'm flying over Area 51. He's talking about this. It's crazy. It's like, what? It was riveting. Yeah. And he's had a couple instances on the radio, which is kind of funny. Since he was a single guy, like the single operator, transmitter, engineer / DJ, he's had a couple instances where he's gone off air. One of them was he touched a transmission line coming off one of the radio antenna towers. Mm-hmm. And those things create huge amounts of static electricity. And he brushed it and it knocked him out for a while.
Oh.
And so the music stopped. And he's out there laying in his yard.
God, that's awful.
And then he finally came back around. And people called the police and stuff because they're like, okay, he was there. Now he's not. Anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. But when we went to Smoky Mountain Bigfoot, one of the questions that I heard that nobody could really answer in a way that made sense to me was, and this is a popular question when it comes to Bigfoot, right? Mm-hmm. Where are the bones? Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're an animal out in the woods kind of a thing and you die, you're going to leave remnants behind.
Yeah.
And that led into the question, does Bigfoot bury its dead? That's an easy answer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you rarely come across bear skeletons, is what everybody says. But you do occasionally come across them. And then the answer that everybody uses, if you're a Sasquatch investigator, well, that's because they bury their dead.
Okay.
Now, if you give this bipedal animal, monkey man, whatever you want to call him, right, humanistic features and attributes, and maybe an ability to think and reason and all that stuff because they're supposed to be highly intelligent, allegedly, that makes sense, doesn't it? And then other people are like, well, if he's an animal, why would he even bother?
Well, okay, so that's where, if it is a bipedal ape of some level of intelligence, yet still an animal, it would make sense to get rid of the body and to keep it away from wherever you eat, sleep, or rest. Because
that makes sense to me, right? But I thought about it. I'm a bipedal animal. I can just walk away.
True.
Like, oh, there's a dead cow. I'm just going to walk away.
But
yeah.
That walking away from an area that may have a secure water source or a secure food source doesn't make sense. It is so hard for animals to find secure food sources. So if you have good hunting grounds, and if we're going to use gorillas or something like that as an example, and one member of your pack or gang or whatever dies, you're going to kind of push it away because the stink is going to make available game. It's going to drive them away. And if it decays, it's going to get in your water supply, and then you're drinking bad water, and then your whole gorilla pack or Bigfoot pack dies.
It's entirely possible. I wrote down a couple reasons why I think that if Bigfoot is what we think it is in general, is that are pretty smart. Okay, so if you don't bury your dead, you're going to attract predators. Because until it starts to decay, there's going to be plenty of things that want to eat. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to deal with that. If you're traveling in a family group or whatever, like some people say that they do, predators is always a concern.
Yeah.
Right? And then once, of course, you have predators, you also run the ability to have to worry about scavengers. Because not everything that eats dead stuff is a predator, right? I mean, you're going to have scavengers too.
Yeah.
Here's something that I thought about that might be kind of terrible. If you are animalistic, right? And this goes back to giants and everything else that we sort of... Cannibalism. What if you're really, you might eat. I mean, there's been tribes that eat people. They eat each other.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Bigfoot's, not that far removed. Maybe you wouldn't put it past them, right? And then, like you brought up, stench and decay. It's going to stink. It's going to become obvious something is dead, and it's going to draw in all sorts of critters that you
don't want.
That you don't want, because if these things are highly intelligent and they're out there and they haven't been seen, caught, whatever, or proven definitively to be even a thing, it's because they're smart enough to hide.
Yeah.
So they call them tree peekers.
Yeah.
Peeking around trees. And I seen this video one time I thought was hilarious. This big giant guy hiding behind a tree, and you could see him because he was peeking, around the tree. He's like, well, if you're a Bigfoot, and then he just turned sideways and stood next to the tree, and he disappeared completely.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard, I think, to think that a big animal like Bigfoot could hide in a forest pretty easily. You just turn sideways and have the tree blocking you, and guess what? You're gone. He stepped into a portal, or did he just turn sideways? And that brought out the jokes that Bigfoot's really thin. So,
well, and just to go on about the whole like stench and decay and all that other stuff that happens with a corpse, we had a coyote die in our valley recently, and you could smell it as it decayed for weeks and weeks. And it died kind of out in the open. It died tucked away behind a bush because it ran after it got shot, I guess. I don't know what happened.
Well, they are critters, man. Yeah. They do eat people's livestock and stuff. So
it fled, and then it completely perished next to a water source, which was horrible. Because for weeks and weeks after, when I'd go on my evening walks, that's all I could smell when I passed that area.
Yeah.
So... yeah, it drew in vultures and all this other stuff. It drew in predators that they didn't want and scavengers, but it also drove away ducks from that area.
Yeah.
So,
well, animals are kind of smart. If they think something's dead, they don't hang around to figure out what made it dead, because they could be on the menu as well.
Now, because a lot of comparisons of Bigfoot go to great apes and large apes like that, I did look up the death customs of gorillas, and
because that's a question. If there's any other animals in the animal kingdom out there that have some kind of burial practice or do something to honor their dead, then given the idea that this bipedal primate, if that's what you want to look at it as being, it wouldn't be that far of a stretch to think that they would do something similar, especially if they're considered more intelligent.
From what this one website is, they can, the whole group, like if a silverback dies or an adult male dies, the whole group is affected with what could be described or anthropomorphized as anxiety. They'll even stand guard or watch or have a vigil for a full day, and then the whole troop moves on.
Yeah, I mean, elephants express grief, and they've even gone back to
elephant graveyards.
Yeah, I mean, they have graveyards and stuff like that. I seen a picture of an elephant carrying a baby tiger lion cub because they're cruising across the Serengeti, and it was a picture of an elephant holding this lion cub in its trunk, walking next to a lady lion. Because it was said that the elephant thought that the cub wasn't going to make it. It's going to die traveling across the desert, so it carried it to the watering hole.
Oh.
Walking right next to a lion, like you see some like Walt Disney crap where it's like a lion and,
That's heartwarming.
It is. And he used to say what happened after they got to the water hole, but I think that animals in general, I think they're smarter than what we know, and I think that they do have emotions to a certain degree, depending on what it is. So the idea of Bigfoot burying its dead makes sense. To me, anyway. If you give it some kind of intelligence and you give it credence as to saying, okay, maybe this thing is somewhere in between Neanderthal and North American great ape kind of a thing, it would make sense. If anything, if knowledge is passed down from, through the generations in the animal kingdom, right? Because a lot of animals, they're born and they already know things. It's this sort of inherited knowledge. Who's to say that over 100 years, 1,000 years, million years, whatever it is that this sort of thing is not ingrained in them? If something dies, you honor it and bury it and move it on.
Yeah.
Because why did we start doing that? When did we start burying our dead?
Neanderthal era or whatever. I can't say it according to this one website. Science Focus says.
Well, it's just so that's how far back it can be traced.
130,000 years.
Yeah.
So burying
Probably even more than that.
Yeah.
If we've been on this planet for a long time. But
no, originally it was a practice to basically isolate the body and keep the tribe that the body or the person was with from seeing the body anymore.
Well, that could be. That's the emotional side of things, and that could apply to Bigfoot too. But primarily, the list that we created is about the same, right? If the human dies, predators, scavengers, possible cannibalism, stench, decay. They want to maintain their hidden. You want to keep sort of out of the view of everybody, right? So you try to stay hidden. Emotional, it could even be spiritual for humans, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times things died and people didn't know why they died. So don't touch it, right? Ooh, I don't know what caused that, right? It could be, whatever. And then later on, of course, when you incorporate things like the Black Death or Black Plague or whatever, you bury it because it gets it away.
Yeah.
Because don't know what's killing you. But, chances are it could spread from the dead, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So I heard that question asked, how come there's no bones? And then, dude confidently said, that's because they bury their dead. And the guy didn't expand on that, and the person asking the question didn't really
follow up.
Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, well, I mean, I can kind of see that. I mean, sure.
I mean, I'm if Bigfoot is real, I'm not sure if they would bury their dead. And if I keep comparing it to apes of higher intelligences, well, I don't see anything about gorillas burying their dead. Gorillas do hold a full-on funeral for their dead, and then they observe their dead, and then they carry on.
Yeah.
Now,
well, I mean, a lot of them get covered, though. Have you seen that? Where, like, dogs will even try to cover.
Yeah, that's true. But, if we just stick solely with apes, I just think it's going to be near impossible. I mean,
what's going to be near impossible?
To find a Bigfoot body and bones.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's ever going to be found, it's going to be because of either it's a horrific accident, like what happened allegedly around Mount St. Helens when it blew.
Yeah.
Allegedly, families of Bigfoots were killed in the blast, and government came in and took them away, and they even activated some National Guard and all the crazy stuff. And then the incident that allegedly happened in Boone, where they flew in special forces to take care of some rogue, angry Bigfoot by shooting them, and they were taken away. And then who knows? Maybe there's a department of the Smithsonian that comes and takes giant bones away. Maybe they know about Bigfoot stuff too. And maybe the national parks were actually created to sort of keep an eye on these things. Well, I mean, that's supposed to be the big thing, right? Or one of the things that's a possibility is that Teddy Roosevelt basically turned around and created national parks because he ran into and had an incident with Bigfoots, and basically they had to take care of them. And what they realized was these things travel from Canada all the way down into the national parks to winter over and kind of do that sort of thing. So why not make that entire area sort of an area to keep people away? Because Teddy Roosevelt was a naturalist. So you don't want to just kill a natural creature. But sadly, I think it's more along the lines of like, there's a bunch of feral people that live here that eat other people, so let's just keep regular people away. Because you can have Bigfoots, and which is more likely? Bigfoot? Possibly. Or weird, inbred, crazy feral humans that eat other people and steal people.
Okay. So let's take both those theories and then think about the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail or the Continental Divide Trail. Yes, they have occasional disappearances, missing persons, and deaths, but a lot of those go through national parks and national forests and national recreation areas.
Yeah, sure.
So are those safe passageways?
I think it depends.
Okay.
I think if it's populated by a bunch of people walking, tromping, making a bunch of noise, yeah, it'd be safe because if you would want to stay away. If you're a feral person, you probably want to stay away.
No, I will say part of the Continental Divide Trail is like super protected. You have to get special permits and time of year for that. So, yeah.
I think it's entirely possible. And everybody's like, no, I mean, come on. The last time I actually looked at it, there was 4,796 disappearances in national parks in the continental U.S. alone. That was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, how many are there now? I have no idea. Could be more, could be less. Might be real, might be shit. Who knows? It's just an idea. So, and who knows, man? Honestly, you can step off the trail in some of these places where we've been and be dead for 3 years and nobody ever finds you.
Yeah.
We are in a place where there are no trees, right? There's just little rock outcrops you could see for miles. And they found a dude who was basically like 3 feet off a trail, a heavily trafficked trail for that particular area, who had been dead for years.
Geraldine Largay from Brentwood, Tennessee. She's one of the more well-known cases on the Appalachian Trail. I guess disappeared on July 22nd, 2013, and then I guess eventually found years later, and it was like, she was found a long time later, and it was literally 40, 50 feet off the trail or something like that.
There's places where we are here in Appalachia and Smoky Mountains and stuff where if you fall off the side of a trail, you'll never be seen again. They randomly find cars that have been off the side of the road and just disappeared. And you're like, how long has that been there?
That was a project for the Great Dismal Swamp of Virginia.
Try to find cars?
They were trying to find all the rum runner and moonshiner cars that had been pushed into the Dismal Swamp.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's people now that go around.
They had to give up because they kept pulling so many out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, do Bigfoot bury their dead? If it's even remotely plausible, I think so. Sure, it makes sense to me. Yeah. And if you've been around long enough and been hidden long enough and you're trying to do that sort of thing, yeah, why not? Some people say that they bury them and they put them in, like, weight them down and put them in, like, rivers and stuff like that. It's just, who knows, right? I mean, there's lots of reasons why you would want to bury the dead if you're trying to maintain some kind of silence and be completely hidden and be out of the way of, regular humans' eyes. But who knows? But I tell you what, though, this got me thinking about the International Space Station.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Terrible segue, but...
Okay.
We've actually talked about this, or I've talked at you about this in agonizing detail the other day, and you were not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here it is, right? So the Russians are eventually going to be leaving the International Space Station, they say in 2024.
Yeah.
Right? So the announcement comes as NASA and Roscosmos are laying plans to transition to other stations, and this is post-ISS. So why would the Russians actually opt out of being in the International Space Station? I mean, they built a couple space stations, right?
Yeah, and it says to other stations post-ISS. Maybe they want to condense their efforts and only focus on their own stuff.
No, they're mad at the Western world because of the Ukraine situation. That's one reason.
Okay.
Which I think is not the actual reason. I think there's a couple different reasons why it makes sense that the Russians would want to leave the International Space Station. Okay? So the first reason is, and let's do the obvious, right? Well, Ukraine and everybody's mad at us and we don't want to be a part of it, so how dare you? I don't think that's the real reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think, number one, it's too expensive. I don't think they have the money. I don't think they have the resources as much as they had anymore because it's terribly expensive.
Yeah.
All right? Number two, I think that it's fallen apart. I think that the sections that they've built and attached and all that sort of thing is turning into garbage. And I don't think they can fix it, and I don't think that they're going to have the money to be able to replace those sections.
Okay.
I mean, they found holes, like drill holes, where they've drilled through the side of the thing. And because there's been some quality control issues with some of the sections that they've used.
Okay.
Number three, I don't think they're using as much... with other means to get supplies to the space station, I don't think they're using the Soyuz capsules, I think they were called Soyuz, as much as they could. And so they're not getting that revenue. So, again, it's still expensive. Another reason, I think that since they're going to be trying to partner with China for a lot of things, and Russia probably can't build their own anymore, because it is an expensive endeavor, that, China is like, if you partner with us, you can't be a part of that.
And that sounds like the most likely scenario.
Sure, communist, and basically Russia's still communist.
Okay.
So they're pairing together. And if they're pairing together in a way that they have to break the ties with the International Space Station and the rest of the Western world, what are they doing? they're going to basically create a weaponized platform. And I think this has been common knowledge up amongst, all the conspiracy government people up there. I think that's part of the reason why the Space Force was created. I think this is a long time coming.
Okay.
And so if they get together with Russia, if Russia and China get together, now they have options. They can do stuff that the rest of the world would frown on them for doing because it's just them two. A criminal can hang out with another criminal. They don't care what everybody else thinks, but everybody else looks at these criminals as being criminals, right? It's easy to be the bad guy if the guy next to you is a bad guy too.
Okay, first off, that's profiling.
Secondly, that's, call it what you will.
Second, I know you've been watching a lot of For All Mankind, but...
Secondly, how dare you, first off, try to pigeonhole my experience and what I've been looking at as being tied to a show. I am a Cold War sailor, and we were just, basically, we didn't trust the Russians, and we still don't.
My biggest concern about this, and I'll go so far as to extend this to, the independent, the Bezos and the Elon Musks. I think we are too caught up in the processes and not doing things for the science, because all of it costs money. Space is expensive.
And whose fault is that?
Humanity's. Okay.
It's our own government's fault.
True.
They've had the opportunities to fund NASA. They've taken away funding. They've deliberately put NASA into research and the money on the back burner and made it a non-issue.
And I'm sure
even to the point where they're like, you know what? Let's let these commercial people do it for us.
And I'm
that's
sure
an insult.
That's also happening in other governments. I'm sure that's happening across the world, and it's annoying because I still want, I guess, a society that wants to pursue the truth, whether the truth is science or exploration or whatever. I've gotten to the point where I think, I would hope we would want to pursue space. And I think we are still so caught up in, you have to have this black ops, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that's the case. Why can't we just fund the science? And that's me being an ideologue. Well,
guess what? I think that's the way it used to be. It's not the way now. And I think our government has deliberately let that shit go away.
I know.
I mean, seriously, they took away NASA's money.
But
everything costs money.
Yeah.
And the space program has not been, ever since, I think, honestly, since we've had a couple space shuttle disasters, the risk hasn't been worth the reward for the government, and that's why they've sort of taken the money away.
And it sucks because I know there's people out there in those countries like Russia and in China who are in pursuit of the science. But just like with our government, they have to deal with theirs, and it just sucks for them.
I honestly think Russia and China are in it less for the science and more for gain, personal gain, country gain, basically to put themselves in a spot where they are superior or trying to be superior. That's part of it, a big part of it.
So do you think we would witness a new era of colonization in general, but in this instance, it would be space?
That's what they're going for.
Or
with the idea of going to Mars, there's going to be a new moon base, and there's countries that are trying to get up there and do it. And I think they misjudged the entire space program as a whole when it comes to NASA and not having the funding or the money because they were short-sighted and talking about the government. Yeah. And I think now that there's a little bit of a renewed interest because other countries are on the verge of being able to do it. They're way more ahead now. We can't even get our own selves in space. NASA can't put us in space.
Yeah.
We have to catch rides from companies. It's like Uber. You know what I mean? And that's pitiful.
I know.
And then they're like, the space shuttle's too expensive. Come on, man. I mean, yeah, it is expensive, and it was expensive, but there was nothing that said, hey, why don't we make a smaller space shuttle? Why don't we do things a little bit differently? We could do this. And they just didn't. They haven't done it because there really hasn't been much bang for the buck. Mm-hmm. It's easy to cut a program like NASA space programs in general because, and so that's why with the latest telescope launch and things like that, that's more about the science, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to make that glamorous. And it is to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that's happened, and it's the silliest thing that's happened, is when they launched basically a Tesla Roadster with a Moon Man guy in it and send it around. People are like, whoa, that's crazy. Come on, man. Now, my hope is that we have a secret government space force, and we've been flying all over the place throughout the galaxy since the 60s.
Yeah.
Because that would be cool, but I don't know. So I think they're leaving. The Russians probably aren't even going to be able to have, even with China's support and partnership, they're probably not even going to be able to have an international space station for another 10 to 12 years. Unless they've already been doing it. I would not put that past China or Russia to have been already constructing a space station. And they're getting to the point where they need some heavy lift rockets and things like that to be able to show. And now they're ready to the point where we're going to separate in 2024. I wouldn't be surprised in 2025 they start launching stuff.
Okay.
So would not be surprised at all. So speaking of UFO false flags. So our last episode, we talked about Mike Barra, right, at Spruce Pine when we did this alien thing.
Yeah.
It was called Space, Spruce Pine, Alien.
Spruce Pine, UFO. Oh, God.
It was an acronym. It was clever. We're not. Yeah. So recently, he was asked a couple questions by the Sun, right? The Sun UK.
Spruce Pine Alien Conference and Expo.
That's what it
was. So it stood for space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's been, okay, so Mike Barra is a guy who's been on Ancient Aliens. He's an aerospace guy, like 25 years as an aerospace engineer. So he's a UFO guy, right? Pretty outspoken, has his own opinion on things, and some people like him, some people don't. Right? So he was recently asked what he thought of the videos that everybody's been sort of talking about for the past, 2 years. Like with the TikTok or the Tic Tac, the videos that were filmed by the U.S. Navy pilots that sort of led to this whole, disclosure and all this other crazy stuff that really hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Like Fast Mover, Tic Tac, and there was another one. But so Mike Barra, who said, and this is the way I like the way the article reads, right? Mike Barra, who says he has worked on many classified military projects, said he analyzed the videos. And these are the videos that are often referred to as the gimbal, Tic Tac, and Go Fast, right? Mm-hmm. And he says there's nothing exceptional about any of them. And he's one of the first people to kind of really come out there and say, no, these are trash.
Really?
Yeah. And so when I read that, because I've seen these videos many, many times, and they don't do not a thing for me. They don't make me go, whoa. It just, they don't have any kind of, it's like, huh. And usually with me personally, when that happens, it's because it's nothing exceptional or exciting about it, because it could be either explained as being mankind or a human created, whatever. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do it for me.
Okay.
I have seen stuff where I'm like, what the hell is that? Right. That's the stuff I'm excited about. So when I watch these videos, I'm like, because okay. So he says, Mike Barra, that there's nothing exceptional about any of these videos. And I'm like, okay. And basically, the TV personality believes they all show easily explainable phenomena, such as drones, and in a wild theory, he believes they could have been leaked to prepare us for a fake alien invasion.
A fake alien invasion.
Right.
Okay.
And so self-confessed conspiracy theorist Mike told The Sun, the Navy put out these videos about 4 or 5 years ago now about these objects. And there's one called Gimbal, Go Fast, and one called Tic Tac. I'm an aerospace engineer, spent 25 years working in the industry. I know my aircraft, and I also know the capabilities of the instrument. I'm a big aviation buff, and I know everything that flies in the sky. And he said, I was on many different platforms. Some were classified, some were military, and some were commercial. So when I'm looking at these videos, I'm looking at a couple different things. First of all, I can see is performing in a conventional manner. So basically, he's trying to see if it performs conventionally. Mm-hmm. Right? He says there's nothing exceptional about any of these videos. For example, there's the Tic Tac video. And when they say, oh, look, it shoots off the screen at a rapid speed, that's not what happens. there's a little instrument indication there on the display, and that's the zoom factor. And what happens is it says it's zooming from 1, which is the normal focal length of the lens, to a zoom factor of 2.
Yeah.
Right? So what happens is they zoom up, and it zooms up past the object, and it disappears off the side of the screen.
And any photographer, videographer should notice
You said
that.
this when we watched it.
Yeah.
And we've done the same thing, because if you were zoomed in all the way and you move a millimeter, it translates into a whole bunch of movement on the screen. That's why it's so hard to capture something so far in the sky.
Yeah. And even just like in regular photography and videography, if you zoom in by a factor of 2, you cut off the top of somebody's head, or now you're only filming.
Or you film the screen so you've lost all your real estate around the object, and so it makes it really hard to keep it centered and locked into place, right?
Yeah.
He said the object doesn't move at all, and that's very obvious to anyone who knows what they're looking at, but they're passing it off as, oh, the object shoots off the screen, and then they cut it off immediately. You're talking about the video, right?
Yeah.
Immediately watching that, I'm detecting an air of deception about these videos. They've been sanctioned, in essence, by the Pentagon, which means the military wants you to think that they might be alien spacecraft. And so why would they want that? That's his question, right? Again, I went through all the videos, and I can explain why none of them are exceptional. The Go Fast video is probably a countermeasure of some kind, probably being towed by another aircraft that's not really going that fast.
Huh.
Because everything was below 25,000 feet, and everything is traveling at subsonic speeds, and everything is traveling in a straight line. And in the gimbal video, that thing looks like a drone combat aircraft being texted, and you're simply looking down on the wings as this F-18 is tracking.
I think it was supposed to say tested, probably.
Yeah. So why is this narrative that there may be alien spacecraft being pushed? That's a question he's got. It says, also, you hear about these pilots going, whoa, dude, look at that. And he goes, I've known fighter pilots. They don't talk like that. You don't talk like that in a combat situation, and everything is pretty much by the book.
That was the thing that bothered me, because yes, you can have genuine reactions if something is truly so startling. Those seem like genuine casual responses. Now, we have seen interesting footage, especially at like Chicago Airport, from pilots who have seen UFOs. And these are civilians, they're pilots, and when they're reporting the phenomenon, because we've seen the videos, they're still in their pilot mode.
Yeah.
Air control, IC, blah, 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 heading, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, seeing a UFO.
They're trained. Pilots in general, I mean, even the ones like that you see in real world, they are trained to be precise, non-reactive to weird emotional stimuli.
Yeah.
Right? And they enjoy their pilot talk, because the calmer and cooler you are in a crazy, crazy situation, the better you appear to be.
Yeah.
Steely, I'm Top Gun kind of guy. Nothing gets, I fly, all that kind of stuff. And that's an attitude that they're taught.
Yeah.
And they're also taught to be calm and to be cool and collected when they give these responses, because a lot of times they're flying so fast.
And that's the thing. You're flying so fast, you can't provide emotion or intuition when you're trying, like intonation, I should say.
Yeah.
When you're trying to provide facts and calculations and anticipate
you got to be cool under pressure. Because if you went out there and you start freaking out all crazy and stuff, there is a likelihood a flight surgeon might have questions for you. You know what I mean?
And plus, by the time you say, oh my God, dude, that's a UFO, during that span of that sentence, you could have provided weather conditions or some sort of analytical observation.
I think if you mention it, I think it's probably different now. But if you were mentioning, oh my God, there's a UFO, the very first thing they're going to do is piss test you when you get out of that plane.
That's true.
Because you are in charge of some of the most expensive equipment the military has to offer. We're talking, planes that could be upwards of multiple millions of dollars. Are they going to let you and your wacky self, who's getting all crazy and stuff, fly that thing? I mean, come on, man.
I do think they were too casual of an emphatic response.
Now, we could have this completely wrong. They could just be flying around and just happen to notice it, and not really on some kind of mission other than transit, which you'd have more of a relaxed circumstance, but I don't know. So here's what he says as far as there's a lot of rumors in the UFO community, and there's a rumor about Project Bluebeam, which is the idea of a fake alien invasion So they can basically use it as an excuse to take control of government's freedoms and rights. And we've sort of talked about Project Bluebeam, where they were like, hey, let's use everything we can to say it's like the second coming of Jesus and basically control kind of what's going on. It's sort of a crazy theory, so you should sort of look it up. I don't know. So he says, I can speculate about what the agenda is, but clearly I think it's how they can manipulate public opinion and how they will get us to cooperate with the directives.
See, we had somebody express theories, and I think it was, what's that guy, the UK guy? And his theory was more like, just this footage wasn't to, this whole Project Bluebeam or anything like that. It was to desensitize us so that we're more acclimated just to when one of the world governments finally says, yes, there's UFOs.
Yeah, well, I kind of think it's different. I kind of think it's to desensitize us because the technology we have is currently way more than what the public knows or is familiar with.
Yeah.
So they're making it a thing where it's not a big deal. So if you capture, this crazy aircraft flying by at Mach 800 or whatever, with its hair on fire, changing shape as it flies, and you report it, it's not going to get a second look. Or if it does, it's going to die quickly. So I think that they're doing this because we've seen where the Navy has filed patents for alternative propulsion. That was years ago.
Yeah.
Right? We're seeing where you can actually buy drone systems to fly along with your jet, like Able Wingman and stuff. That stuff is readily and commercially available. We've seen footage where it looks like a drone swarm was coming out of the back of a fighter jet flying over Area 51. And allegedly there's video footage of that drone swarm flying and landing in a hangar in Area 51. I think it's basically all the new technology that we have. Oh, even the Chinese were like, yeah, those are drones when they flew around the USS Omaha. Right? And there was even some things about that saying, oh, well, they can't possibly fly that sort of, And so I think that in a lot of ways, this disclosure thing is not for aliens necessarily, or just for sort of softening the blow and reducing the public sort of scrutiny of our current technology, which is basically, I think, almost light years ahead of what we're used to actually seeing. Can you imagine if you were a pilot and you flew those little propeller planes and then you got passed by a jet going 700 freaking miles an hour, and we're talking you went from propellers to rocket-propelled aircraft in the span of 5 years?
Yeah.
I mean, and there are UFO-style aircraft out there. Air Force was testing them and all sorts of stuff, so who knows, right?
We have 2 local listeners, and it was a thing. It's been an ongoing thing. One of them might be staying with their mom out towards the Linville Gorge area, and they've got it down to a science where they'll see something flying very fast through that area, and then she waits maybe 5 minutes and sends me a text message and says, go stand outside in another 3 minutes, and you're going to see something. And it's usually a very fast aircraft coming across this area.
Aircraft something, yeah.
And I mean, I think it's possible. I just think, I don't know. I think again, we're not paying enough attention. So
I think that's the entire point. I think all this information is diluting everything to where even if you are paying attention, nobody cares.
Yeah, it's true.
I think that's what it's getting to. And these are 2 things that, from reading that article and thinking about this stuff and all of that, it sort of don't make sense to me and sort of aggravate me, right? So these are 2 UFO, ideas that don't make sense to me. This one is navigation lights. Well, it's obviously not our technology because there's no navigation lights. Little red and green lights and white lights that blink and shit, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, navigation lights and that secret military craft or aliens actually adhere to FAA rules. If I have a secret military aircraft, I'm turning those lights off.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens if I fly with them off? Stuff might run into me, but if that's my entire goal is to become secret or be stealthy or don't want everybody to know, I'm going to turn the lights off.
Aren't certain...
And why would aliens have lights blinking around all like, why would they don't care?
Aren't certain small aircraft and helicopters allowed to turn their lights off for certain types of rescue or airlift?
I don't think so. I think you got to have them on.
No, because I remember somebody saying that for like...
It depends on... Yeah. I don't know. Regardless, if you're flying a secret aircraft, are you going to keep your lights blinking?
No.
No, the only way you'd want to keep your lights blinking is if you're done doing whatever this secret crap you're doing and you just want people to think it's just a regular aircraft in the sky. But to think that, oh, well, it doesn't have lights or the lights aren't blinking, like they have to adhere to the FAA rules. I just think it's a stupid thing to say. It doesn't make sense to me, right? And here's something else, too. When they'll say, well, since no human can withstand the excessive G-force, it's obviously alien. It's like, well, take the human out of the equation. That's the entire point of drones. If you don't have a human to worry about, you can do any freaking thing you want. If that craft has the capability of stopping on a dime and going like 150,000 miles per hour, because that's the kind of horsepower and propulsion it has built into it, and you take a human out, it doesn't matter.
And even if it wasn't a human, let's just say it was an alien, and even if they were an advanced race, alien bodies still have to obey the laws of physics. Even if they grew up like on a planet that had like crazy gravity and stuff like that, their bodies would still have to apply by,
Well, I understand what you're saying, and here's where I respectfully disagree. Okay. If you can basically create a gravitational bubble, right, and you can be inside that bubble, and then you create another bubble on the outside for propulsion by repelling yourself away using gravitational forces, what you've done is you've created a sort of a safe space for you to where the amount of external gravity forces no longer apply.
Yes, and I agree. That is one of many theories. I actually just recently read a book with a little bit about that in it, and it was like, okay, that's possible too, but it doesn't necessarily. The likelihood is that, like you're saying, there's not a living entity in these things.
Yeah,
so
because why you don't even need it. They have AI drones. There's stuff that can give it a mission and it flies away.
If you're advanced enough to build a gravity bubble within a stationary, all that jazz, then you're smart enough to build AI. I mean.
Excuse me, but see, here's what I don't think a lot of people consider. I think we have conventional technology that's proceeding along a conventional direction. AIs, computers, silicone chips, the entire thing, right? Conventionally. And I also think we have alternate technology based off of whatever that is way beyond us and maybe came from UFOs or whatever. That doesn't adhere to physics in the same way that we're conventionally aware of. It's an alternative, right? It's an alternative or an alternate form of propulsion. It's an alternative way of looking at things. And I think they both exist at the same time. And sometimes you see things that are basically alternate or alternative, right? And then sometimes you see conventional. I think the more of what you see is actually conventional. I think they're both happening at the same time, and they have been happening at the same time.
And whether it's by human government forces or be it alien forces. I mean, like I said, I just recently finished a book last night on the Orville we were seeing, where they sent an AI to do a human's job or do tasks.
Oh, that was a show we were watching.
Yeah, I recently read a book, and like I said, the Orville, they had Isaac or whatever, and it makes much more sense to put all that effort into an AI than to send a living entity to do all those tasks. Because there are still some parts of time and physics that you have to abide by. That is a huge investment in a living organism.
To me, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
We do it all the time. We have probes that go to Mars.
Yeah.
It's easier.
It's easier than...
And this is how I think that people aren't even thinking about this.
But I think it's like... And it's easier to invest in that AI than it is to invest in the well-being of a living entity.
Yeah.
And part of that, though, with the people who argue, I think they are devaluing life or the value of that living entity that would have to do those tasks.
Well, I don't think the life value per se comes into the factor, or more of which is easier. As in, if I don't have to worry about the life involved, then a lot of physical constraints no longer apply.
No, I'm saying the people who believe it's a living being.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But they have a tendency, I think, to go, well, the technology is so advanced that they're just protected by a sphere inside a sphere, inside a torial donut.
Those people think that humanity is so important that they deserve a phone call, not an email, or they deserve a living person, not an android or AI or whatever,
I read part of an article today, and I'll be honest, I skimmed past the headline and quit. They're actually saying this. This article was like, if we're looking for alien worlds and planets and possibility of life on other planets, at night, we can look to see if there's light coming off that planet. Right. So picture, if you will, you're in space and it's dark and you see the Earth, and the Earth in the dark sections have light, artificial created light. That symbol that basically can give you a strong indicator that there's life there, because nobody wants to see in the dark, right? So what if we take that idea and look at planets, and if we see lights on that planet, chances are there's life there, because they don't want to sit around in the dark.
What?
And my thought was, well, yeah, no shit. Why would you not do that? Why would you not, if you look at a planet, you're like, hey, there's lights on there.
Okay.
So that's a way that they can look to see if there's light. I'm like, what? Are we just writing articles to get paid the $75?
Not even. It's $40 now.
Or whatever it is, $40. So I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, that just made me less smart. Going, well, so if we're both looking at a planet and I see lights and you see lights, and I go, you think there's life there? And you go, nope. But I'm like, there's lights. I can't really say.
Okay.
But that's applying a humanistic thing, because, like, imagine if you're an animal who lives in the deepest depths of the ocean.
Which is what I was about to say.
Do you need lights, or do you think maybe you somehow or another evolve to the point where you can see in the dark?
Oh, my gosh.
Or like some of these cave fish don't even have eyeballs. They don't need them. They're like, hey. And that's like implying that maybe life evolves in the universe kind of on the same tangent or path as us.
So octopi, octopuses, they have a long separate evolution from the traditional evolution of vertebrate animals, creatures, right?
Yes.
They live underwater. The UK has tried to deem them sentient. All this stuff.
Well, I think they could be, actually.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time thinking about calamari now, because, they've passed all these tests proving that they're sentient.
Yeah.
And it's like that. If octopuses evolved any further, they would still stay underwater. Some species do end up on land, some in fresh water, but they would never break the surface of the water. They'd stay in the deep ocean. They'd form their entire society.
Well, yeah, because to them...
And then you have to deal with an ocean, an atmosphere, land obstruction, and you're going to look for lights? Are you kidding me? Or like the horrible plot to Pitch Black. I mean, wasn't Vin Diesel's whole part of their race all looking in the dark all the time?
Well,
no,
but I mean, okay, that says...
I know, but it's
I get what you're saying, but okay, I'm not going to talk about freaking Vin Diesel.
I know, not everybody and not every planet evolves the same way. Light is not always necessary.
Yeah, well, that's like we read that one thing. It's like, what we could do? We could look for their trash. It's like, just because we're trashy doesn't mean they're trashy. Because I would like to think that eventually, after like eons or whatever, if they're going to travel in space, they probably have a way to take care of their garbage. Maybe not. Maybe they're like dirt bags, just pump it out the side like we do. Like, that space is going to be eventually filled with, like, vials of just frozen pee. Right? I mean, who knows?
It's got like intergalactic trucker lemonade everywhere.
They spray it out there. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. And one more thing before we wrap up the podcast. Let's talk more about robots again. We talked about the idea of AIs and possibly sending a robot out into space, because it makes sense, because you don't have to worry about the human factor. The other day I watched a video. Allegedly, this is somewhere in Russia, of one of these robot dogs. You know what I'm talking about? The ones that look like from Boston Dynamics, a little headless dog thing stomping around.
I love them.
Well, the video and the link that I have provided shows this robot dog with a machine gun on its head shooting stuff.
That looks horrible.
Well, I mean, the dog doesn't care, because it doesn't care what you do. And that's the entire point behind the whole robots, right? When you look at Isaac Asimov and he had his rules, was it Isaac Asimov that had the rules?
Asimov's 3 laws.
Yeah. don't harm humans is there. Well, the robots aren't capable of having enough where they are in development. Now, they're not capable of basically doing that, right? They're just not, because we're not adhering to it. Because you got somewhere like Russia where they strap a gun to this dog thing's head and it's trying to shoot stuff. The gun is controlled by the operator. Mm-hmm. Does that make it okay? Or is it still a robot with a freaking gun on its head?
But at that point, I don't consider it under the realm of Asimov's 3 laws because it has an operator.
Sure, but my point is, eventually,
yeah.
If you are willing to strap a gun on a robot dog's head,
yeah,
you're eventually going to figure out how to do it to where you don't have to. Like, as in other words, like you don't have to control it. You're going to send it out on its own. So we are setting ourselves up to be destroyed by robots, just like every freaking science fiction book you watch.
Or just, in this instance, Russia is trashy enough to stick a gun on top of everything.
Yeah, they've been that way. They don't care. They don't care.
I don't think Asimov applies to this.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that they're not applying any of that to this.
Because I kind of look at this, and the first thing I think of is like, my little brother taping a Nerf gun to a remote control car. That's kind of how I look at this.
But it's an autonomous robot. The robot can navigate its way there.
Can it
You're just pulling the trigger. Yet? Why wouldn't it not be able to? If it can walk and navigate terrain, it can certainly figure out, shoot.
That's my stipulation right there, though. If at this time someone else is pulling the trigger, not the autonomous robot, then it's still outside of those robotics rules, and I don't.
Right, but my point is that nobody's adhering to those rules. Nobody. I mean, come on. We've got humans that are weaponizing robots, right? It's already happening. We also have like AI drones that are taking tanks out.
So dumb.
Right? God. Or people or whatever. They can easily do that. They can lock into a target and do what it's got to do. And it can think along the way and navigate, right? So it's got its own little form of intelligence there. We've got robot dogs and robot dogs with guns strapped to their head.
Yeah.
I mean, think about cars and off-road vehicles and things like that are AI-driven.
Yeah.
And boats and underwater submersibles. And any or all of these are weaponized. I guarantee you, as soon as somebody figured out how to make the dog walk or run on its own and carry a bag or a pack, they're like, we can fit this with a targeting system. We can control it from GPS if we need to. Or we can create an autonomous mode where basically the thing will just shoot anything that moves.
See, that's the part I don't like.
Well, yeah, nobody likes it. That's my entire point, is that we're not adhering to any of these rules.
I hope the ethics remain that true robotics, the robot would have to be able to make those decisions accurately. And
only if it's been programmed to do that. I don't even think it's part of the programming, because I think that is too complex.
Yeah, it's too complex. That's why I equivalated this to a RC car with a Nerf gun.
If it could, if it could and was artificially intelligent enough to make that determination, then it's one step away from robots exterminating everything on the planet, just like that stupid episode of Orville we watched last night.
It's not
and every scary book.
It's not one step.
And every Terminator movie.
There are several steps between this little robot dog and Skynet, okay?
Well, 3 years ago, you had the chatbots from Google and Facebook talking to each other, and they eventually created their own language because using the regular language was too cumbersome.
I thought it was Microsoft and Twitter.
Does it matter? It's not Microsoft and Twitter. It's definitely not Twitter. It was Google and something else.
It was Twitter.
No.
Okay.
No, Twitter ain't that smart. It's not. That's why they have the problems that they have. I'm serious. So we, I think, are going to do what every freaking sci-fi book says. You create a robot, it's great. You rely on it. Eventually, you give it artificial intelligence, and it kills the entire planet. Because some knucklehead goes, let's make the world safe. Do everything you can to make the world safe. What makes the world safe? Get rid of all humans. Animals are animals, but they don't have nearly as much impact as humans do. Mm-hmm. I mean, give me an animal that's made like the Taj Mahal. I mean, sure, you can make an anthill, make a burrow, make a tunnel.
Okay.
Can't put blocks together and create the Taj Mahal. You can't nuke the planet. Humans can. It's like every evil. Humans are evil. Humans are a virus on the planet. Whatever, man. It's already happening. As soon as they strapped a gun on a robot dog's head, The only thing that was
not
missing in
fair.
the only thing that was missing in the video was like snickering off in the corner, laughing about it. Telling you, man,
It's horrible.
it is what it is, and that's what's going to be.
I'm so mad because I love those little dogs. I love the Boston.
Well, they already got them
Dynamic
running. They
dogs.
have them running around with a bullhorn on it, yelling like "Stay in your house! You're going to get COVID. Stay in your house!" Yelling some Chinese robot thing running around yelling
I
stuff.
saw one on a commercial recently.
They had
didn't
them running around in a homeless camp somewhere, taking people's temperatures. If I had a robot dog come up being, want to take my temperature, I'm not going to do it. Am I being detained? I'm going to ask it. I have rights. Am I being detained? And that thing pops out a gun. That's the end of it. And if the thing can go to the refrigerator and get you a beer, like the Happy Boston Dynamics videos, it can certainly grab a 45. And who's to say it doesn't have a home security mode? Well, it's not actively shooting people. It's just keeping my property secure. Well, it's not actively killing people. It's just keeping my borders safe. We're on our way, man. 30 years, I'm telling you.
horrible.
People are going to start getting shot by robots.
We should cherish these Boston Dynamic robot dogs.
I think that we should kill them all.
No.
I think we should take robotics seriously and also make sure that we enact our... But it's not going to happen because there will always be somebody that's going to strap a gun to its head
It's awful.
and make it run around shooting stuff.
All dogs.
If it hasn't already happened.
All dogs are awesome. Even robot dogs.
No.
Yep.
I think it's inevitable. I think AI is going to rule the roost. So, and I think they even nicknamed the dog Skynet or something crazy like that to give it some goofball name. But anyway, as they say in the biz, that's it. We're out. We're done.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you would like to say? Or contribute?
Thank you for tuning in. If you like the show and you listen to us, be sure to vote for us on Paranormality's Vote for Your Favorite Podcast. We've provided a link at the top of the show notes. Also, join us on social media. We are all over Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. Join up, check us out, interact with us, and check out the Etsy store that we have all of our latest stickers listed on. Okay?
Yes. Oh, and I'd like to say the last 2 episodes that we published, the title information has been somehow or another magically removed from all the work it takes to put it all in. So you've seen episode 249 in no title and episode 250 with no title. I don't know why that's happening. After 250 episodes, I can count on both hands the number of mistakes I've made.
Okay.
And those are 2 I'm not going to claim because it did it before and it's doing it again. So I have no idea why it's stripping information away.
Yeah.
So that's my apology. If you're one of these people like, why didn't they give it a title? It was not intentional.
Yeah.
I think long and hard about the dumb titles we come up with.
Yes.
So, and you can always tell the ones that are better because those are the ones that Omi does. So anyway,
He spends the
appreciate you
entire
listening.
length of making dinner to come up with the titles, y'all.
Yeah, that's what she thinks. I secretly take naps. So, quick nap. Begin power nap, right? Anyway, there you go. So see you later. Take it easy. Bicycle.
Bye.